Hey guys, today we're going to show you how to install penny tile backsplash.
Okay, so what tools are needed to do this job? First up in our lineup here, we have a grout float. I got a kind of larger one, but I don't think it really matters all that much what size you get. The larger one was fine. You got your 3/16 trowel with the square edges. This worked out well. Next up is these kind of hand scrapers. This helped a lot for scraping off the excess and wiping it back into the bucket of the mortar, and also just applying the mortar to the wall before spreading it around with this. These were great. I got these from Harbor Freight. You're gonna need a big sponge like this. I had 3 of these and that was a good amount. This actually was a lot more helpful than I thought. A Scotch-Brite scuff pad. Once you sponge off the excess, you're gonna go through with this, and this really helps get any last little bits, and it really gave it a nice shine. As well as a microfiber cloth. I only had like 3 of these, so I didn't use it too much, but after you're done with your final sponging, you'll still have a little bit of haze, and it helps a lot to have a nice dry microfiber to clean that excess off. And then, I would finish with this. So, this was the mortar that I used. I definitely did not need to get this big of a bucket, but I'm planning on doing some more projects in the future with tile, so that's all right. I bought this at Home Depot, and this stuff was fantastic. I put up the tiles, I didn't have to mix anything, and they didn't slide down the wall or anything like that. So this stuff was great. This is the grout I used. This was from Floor and Decor. I mean, I thought it was kind of expensive. It was like 50 bucks for this little thing. But, again, I've never done this before, so I didn't want to have to mess with mixing anything like that. So yeah, it worked. I went with the bright white color, and that's how that looks there. Very happy with that. And if you want to follow my process that I went with, you're going to want to get some kind of penny tile. So here's what we have here. And the reason I like the penny tile is because you don't need to use a wet saw. You can actually just cut these and use a razor blade and cut out your socket holes. And finally, you're going to need 2 buckets. I would actually recommend getting 2 5-gallon buckets because I had to switch the water out quite a bit. So when you're doing your grout, obviously you wipe it all on, and I'll show this later in the video, but it's pretty helpful if you, let's say this is the dirty bucket. Once you're done wiping it off and it's kind of all dirty, go in here, squeeze it out, soak it in here in the clean water, and then squeeze that out into the dirty water so you can keep this bucket nice and clean, because the cleaner the sponge is, the more you're going to be able to clean the excess grout off. So let's get into the next stage here. As you might have noticed in the last video, I ripped some huge chunks out of the wall, taking those baseboards off. So I used this product here and just slathered that in there and sanded it down. That way I had a nice flat wall to start working with. Here is the secret sauce for cutting these tiles up without having to use a wet saw. Go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you shop, get a set of tile nippers. They're like 15, 20 bucks. And you're going to put them right on that outer third, just like you see there. And then when you squeeze it like that, you're going to get a perfect cut. As opposed to if you put it in the middle, you're going to absolutely explode that tile and get super frustrated. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. Boom, perfect cut. Remember to hold on to these half pieces because you will need them later. The first piece of tile you put on there is definitely going to be the most stressful part of this. So here's a few tips. Think about where you want to start. I started on the outer edge because it was more visible than the corner. Hopefully you don't even have a corner. That'd probably make it easier. Um, there's one side of the sheet of tiles that's completely straight, and then the other kind of goes up and down, like you see on the top there. Right, so I put the straight part up against my trim, and then I cut the bottom row of the tiles halfway so that it sat flat on that countertop. This is 5/16 plastic trim, and you can just cut, two little 45s in the back part of it, and that way you can just bend it to a 90 degree and put some mortar behind that, and then some more on top, and you can put your tiles down. I didn't really film me putting the mortar on the wall, but all I will say about that is obviously keep the lines going the same direction and try not to put it on too thick, because then you're going to be trying to clean it out to leave a bit of space in the gaps of the tile to put your grout in there. So as you can see over there where the oven was, I have a little 2x4 screwed in there that's level with the line of the countertop. And that's because you're starting from the countertop and working your way up with each tile. And right on top of my first sheet that I applied for every one, I had to cut a second one in half to fill the whole space. And that's where you take your little half circles that you cut off and you fill in the very tiny little top gaps to get a nice even finish on the top. And then you just start working your way across. I went from both outside edges and finished in the corner. So once you got all of your tiles where you want them, give that mortar a few hours to dry up, and then it's time to start putting in the grout.
Alright guys, so a big tip with this process is you're going to want to go to Thailand and take one of the little girls with you, because that way you can have some free labor out of it.
To get this grout up on the wall, you're going to take your float and start pressing it in at about a 45-degree angle, which is going to push all that stuff into the cracks. And then you're going to come back through at about a 90-degree angle and scrape it off. Don't expect to get everything, because that's what we're going to do in the next stage with the sponge. So unfortunately, I did not film us actually sponging off the grout, but I'm going to explain how you do that. So take a slightly damp sponge and make your first pass. This is where you're kind of removing the bulk of the stuff that's left on the surface of the tile. And then make sure to keep that thing clean. Rotate it around as you use it. Rinse it off frequently. And you're going to want to get it down to the point where there's just a bit of haze, and let that dry up a little bit, so then you can come back with your Scotch-Brite pad and just kind of buff it out. That thing will take off any bigger specks of grout that are left, and it will bring the tile to a nice shine and completely remove the haze. I didn't really use the microfiber cloth, to be honest. Some people like to do that. I found just the sponge and the Scotch-Brite pad to be sufficient. So if this is your first time doing this like it was for me, I hope this video helps give you some of the confidence to give it a shot. I really do hope this helps someone, and if it does, please throw a like down there. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.